So by contrast to an a priori deny that such an event happens is to prejudge the conclusion before doing objective investigation. And that judgment involves a philosophical issue, not a historical one, right? So it's putting kind of the cart before the horse there of saying, I don't believe that there's such thing as ice. And so when someone tells me that they played a hockey game, I know that that can't be possible because water is wet and it moves. It can't be stood still. I've never seen it before, therefore it's not possible. I'm at the equator all the time and I look around. Show me where the ice is at. I don't see it at all. So I know, therefore, when you tell me that you played hockey on frozen water, that's just not possible. So I dismiss the claim rather than just say that, the home team won against the visitors by a score of 3-2, right? So those are two different histories happening there. Well, nevertheless, while historians may bracket out the question of causation, as noted above, they are not normally required to do so. If an event happened, it is legitimate to explore the best hypothesis to explain causation or factors contributing to that event. So it's not outside the realm to ask those questions or to even kind of take it a step further to say, well, were the people who were reporting this, were they embedded in the city and they didn't know what was happening outside? So what they thought was a shooting star was actually someone, lobbing fiery baskets at the field? Or do we have other reports that kind of give us more clues to what may be happening here? So it's not outside the possibility to help to inform that, but it seems like the best step is to take those initial reports and kind of include them all together.
Right. And so he says that some contend that even if a theistic explanation for an event might appear more convincing at present, a purely naturalistic explanation will eventually emerge, right? So, this approach, he says, attempts to evade a possible God of the gaps explanation, right? That's the idea that a theistic interpretation might be overturned in light of a future discovery. We don't want that, right? We don't want to say, well, God did it, and then later find out, oh, wait a minute, there was this particular law of nature that was in effect. And so therefore we can, eliminate God as a causal mechanism of the thing, right? Even though God is a causal mechanism of nature, but we won't go there, right? Anyway, so this approach, right, saying that we need to explain things purely by naturalistic explanation tries to avoid a God of the gaps explanation. But he says this particular approach, it posits in its place, instead of a God of the gaps explanation, something like a naturalism of the gaps explanation, right? This is a naturalistic explanation that awaits further discovery. So we don't know why it happened. We don't want to attribute it to God. We want to try to come up with a purely naturalistic explanation. Well, he says, why isn't that a naturalistic of the gaps explanation, right? So, it presupposes that only a theistic explanation bears any burden of proof. Both the theistic explanation and the naturalistic explanation needs to be shown to be the case. And so why eliminate one over the other, right? And so this approach with regard to only natural explanations, what we're going to consider, because they will eventually emerge and crowd God out. He says this approach is not a neutral approach. It simply works from the presupposition that theism is a philosophically illegitimate explanation, and therefore we shouldn't use it. And of course, he's asking why.
Right? Yeah.